next Thursday, October 13th, versus Stoughton right here at Oregon High School. And then if you want to catch the Panthers in person, you can see them at the conference tournament at Mount Horeb this Saturday. On behalf of the OCA Media Sports production crew, this is Mike Stapleman signing off. Thanks for watching Panther Volleyball on OCA Media Sports. Able to get the puck forward. Jakey has some room. A legitimate chance, and he finds the top of the net. Jakey.
And an early goal for the Panthers. Oh, Euro step, what a move, Olivia Nice. Miles goes on the court, loses, pulls up. Oh my goodness, 7 Miles.
There's only one thing that will save somebody's life, and that is naloxone nasal spray. Get 911 on the phone, get the emergency responses there on their way.
Okay, it is Monday, July 24th, 2023. I'm going to call to order a meeting of the Oregon School District Board of Education. We are at the OSD Innovation Center at Oregon High School. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Bijak? Here. Ms. Garrison? Dr. Lakuta? Here. Mr. LeBrun is not. Dr. Bush?
Here.
Mr. Pankratz?
Present.
Ms. Wright? Here. Ms. Flanagan?
Present. Board does have a quorum. Tim will really appreciate that, though, that he's missed. I do have from Ms. Heights that this meeting has been duly noticed, so we are good there. On our agenda tonight, we do have one action item, and then we do have information items, including the school perception survey report, and then the board will go into closed session, and we will not return after that closed session. So I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight. So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to our consent calendar. We have the minutes of the previous meetings. We have approval of payments. We did have resignation and some assignments. And then I will read the following donations. $1,000 from the Wisconsin Masonic Foundation for the Masonic Foundation Scholarship. $1,000 from the Oregon Masonic Lodge for the Masonic Foundation Scholarship. $1,000 from Wisco Industries for the Wisco Industries Scholarship. $5,000 from the Oregon Community Resource Network for food service balances for students who qualify for reduced lunch or reduced meals, and then $1,879, and then a $115.65 donation, both from the Oregon Food Pantry for food service balances for students who do not qualify for free and reduced lunch but did apply. So we want to thank those individuals and those entities for their donations to the Oregon School District and to our students. Much appreciated. Okay, moving on to B, information items. Oh, sorry, we do need to approve the consent calendar. We've been on break for a while. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Thank you, Katie.
I'll move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes, with an abstention from item C, the 6/12/23.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0, and thanks for that abstention, Mary. All right, moving on now to B, information items. First up is public comment. Katie, do we have anyone registered for public comment? All right, is there anyone here for public comment? One more time, is there anyone here for public comment? Okay, moving on to OEA report. Is there anyone here from the OEA for a report? Seeing no one. Student report is next, but we are in the middle of summer, so we do not have students here, so we will welcome them back in the fall. So moving on to our action item tonight, which is the 2023-2024 co-curricular handbook. So I will turn that over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. One of the ways that I want to start this discussion is putting our attention on our portrait of a graduate, because it's through that portrait of a graduate that we've really described what it is that we hope for our students. And we know that the learning experiences that we're putting together for them both inside and outside the classroom is leading them on a path to that. Because what we're doing outside of the classroom is also our commitment to that, right? To our students, to their future, to their well-being, and really to meeting the needs of the whole child. So co-curriculars are a really important part of that experience. However, our priority is always the academic achievement of our students and their overall wellness. So the changes to the co-curricular code we are proposing are in service of that, of keeping high expectations for our students so that they are more likely to achieve, but also building in supports for them so that we can support them as they learn and grow along the way and become the wonderful adults that we see our school district bringing into the world all of the time. So if you'd like to start by looking at the portion of the packet that is the co-curricular code, the one that has the green markings on it. I'll walk through some of the highlighted large changes that we are proposing, or more significant changes we are proposing, with the understanding that I won't touch on every small piece of change within the document, as much of the changes you see here in green are really meant to provide clarity to the students and to the families who are reading the document. But we'll start by opening up to page 2 in the co-curricular code, where they have the categories of the clubs and the athletics to which this applies. Please note that we have made a slight change where this co-curricular code is applying to athletics and to any performance-based or competitive club. Examples might be DECA, where they go, or FBLA, where they go and they compete somewhere, or forensics, those kinds of things where there is something where they have a school team and they go and they do a competition. So athletics, and performance or competition-based co-curriculars. So now we'll move on to what exactly are we asking you to consider. And then I'll take you to the attendance standards section, which is 2.02. It is always our expectation that our student athletes and our competitive club participants, that they're in school all day, unless they are excused as approved by board policy in the family handbook. But if they do miss, they really do need to inform their coach or the advisor of their absence. And also, our families and students should monitor their attendance status through the parent portal in Infinite Campus. I think that's a really important piece, that you know how you were coded as part of your attendance, and you will see that as we move through this piece. So on practice day, what we are proposing is that in order to participate in practice or an activity, the student must attend at least 3/4 of their school day. And that is unless they are excused by a medical professional, written documentation, an approved school event, parent or guardian, but they must attend at least one class in that situation, or the director of athletics or administration. We know that a lot of things can happen in a school day. We also know that there could be a mistake related to attendance. Consequently, we allow a student at least one day to fix an attendance error and still be able to practice. But on competition days, we do raise the standard a little bit. And that's where if you did have an unexcused absence at some point, you may have been able to practice, but it will stop you from being able to compete if it's not something that you are able to make up. But on a performance or a competition day, you either have to have written documentation from a medical professional for a medical appointment, have attended an approved school event, or of the director of athletics or another administrator approve your absence. So that is an increase in our standards related to competition day and for practicing. But it's because we really do expect our students to be in class. They are students first and athletes second, although we really like to see them in the big picture as student athletes. Now, any excused absence during the day of a season, anything, as indicated by Code A, which is just absent, not parent excused, just not in class. That will result in the students not being able to compete in the next scheduled contest or performance. And they have one business day to make a correction to anything that was perhaps an error. And it's the responsibility of the student to clear that up. And I think that's another really important point, is that we're also encouraging through our structures, students taking accountability, students noticing if there is an absence that perhaps was an error and doing something about that. Although our teachers make every effort to ensure attendance is accurate. So that is the attendance piece. Now the next really important point is starting at the section called grade point average, section 20302. I really recommend for this section that we actually take a look at it by looking at the appendix, because that's a really easy to understand version of the language, and we refer the readers of the Code of Conduct to that also. And that happens to be page 40 of your packet, if you're scrolling all the way through. Because the changes that we are making to basically monitoring student grades, 17 in the packet, thank you. Okay, so it's 17, go ahead and look at it that way. I think it was page 40 of the overall board packet, and that's where that change was. What we're trying to do is set really high expectations, but also increase the amount of support we're giving our students. For example, mid-quarter grades. Ms. Spencer Grant, our athletic director, will be running a grade report. And if there are failing grades, the student has to turn in a weekly co-curricular progress report form to the athletic director until that is a passing grade, till they're meeting the standard. So that catches a student who's perhaps struggling prior to there being an F on the quarter report card, allowing for a conversation with Ms. Spencer Grant and the student, and then making sure the student is connecting with their teacher on that particular issue by having the teacher sign this form on a weekly basis saying how things are improving related to their grades. And then at quarter grades, and once again, a report is run. There can be no failing grades or incompletes. With one failing grade, the student is not eligible to compete until they have a passing grade, but they may practice. For 2 or more failing grades or incompletes, they are ineligible for all co-curricular activities, and they must complete basically a plan. They have to create a plan, present it to their teachers and to their parents, and connect with Ms. Spencer Grant saying, this is how I intend to raise my grades. Because we really want them to take responsibility for whatever is happening, but to work hand in hand with their family and their teacher, and to have Ms. Spencer Grant as somebody who cares about it, is monitoring it, and is giving them encouragement. And then at semester grades, a student has to have a minimum of a 2.0 GPA at the end of the semester. They also may have no failing grades and no grades reported as incompletes. If a failing grade or an incomplete, they are ineligible for 15 consecutive scheduled school days and nights. That's 3 weeks of school. But they may practice. If the student has 2 or more, it's the same 15 school days and nights, but they may not practice. And they have to be able to demonstrate passing grades at the end of the 15-day ineligibility period. Now, what's really important to note, too, is that grade adjustments have to be approved by the principal or the athletic director. So there's always sort of a check on making sure that there's another stage where the conversations are important conversations are happening. If you're starting a new season, Ms. Spencer Grant will look back on your GPA for the previous semester. And I think that's an important piece too, because that means there's always an incentive to do well, not just the semester in which you are competing. And if you have a failing grade on your end of semester 2 report card, you do have summer school to make that up. And you have to make that up as a passing grade before August 1st. But that does give you an opportunity to be eligible in the fall if you're able to do a course correction related to an F at second semester. So far I've talked about attendance and the standards there, and I've talked about grades and the standards there. There are a couple more things, but this might be a good time for a pause.
Does the board have any questions on the attendance or the GPA requirements? Go ahead, Leslie.
Sorry, that wasn't working for some reason. On the attendance section, what I was wondering about, hang on, where's it at? Under the unexcused absence, I'm wondering where it says students will have 1 business day to correct any marking errors. If for some reason they are unable to get that taken care of in 1 business day, is that still able to be taken care of past that point? Or how? Because the way I'm reading it, it doesn't seem like it does, but I don't think that was our intention, probably.
Our intent is for students to be able to take care of the business quickly and not let something like that linger. But if there are extenuating circumstances as to why a student couldn't clear it up, such as a teacher's absence, there'd be an opportunity to talk to Ms. Spencer Grant about that.
Perfect, thank you.
Go ahead, Mary.
So I just want to, I think I understand the intent, but we had talked through a variety of different things during the last policy meeting, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. So this policy will no longer cover just leadership and service clubs at all. Is that correct?
This policy does not, but many of those clubs have their own policies that are a part of belonging to that club, such as National Honor Society.
Sure. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that the et cetera under the performance-based doesn't actually include. Okay. And then the only other question I have on the appendix is there's a reference to a form with an underscore, which I assume was supposed to be the title of the form.
It is. Ms. Spencer Grant is still designing the form. So she will insert that when it goes out to families, but right now we had it blank as she was doing the designing.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other question? Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to, I know we talked about this at policy, but can you explain how the attendance policy is different than what it was before? So it's now 3/4 of the day. What was it prior to that? Just for purposes of understanding what's changing from what the expectation was before this.
Thank you. Before this, we referred the readers of the code, the signers of the code, to the student handbook. And in there, it said that you must attend a minimum of half of your classes to be able to practice. So we are increasing that standard to 3/4, which on an 8-period of day, of course, is a minimum of 6 classes.
And I will say I appreciate that flexibility. I have kids who are regular attenders, but oftentimes my son will get an unexcused absence, marked absent in his homeroom because he's running to a classroom to make up a test, and the teacher inadvertently marks him absent even though he is at school doing something. So I appreciate that type of flexibility in the policy.
All right, any other questions on attendance or GPA? Go ahead, Troy.
Just a clarification, just to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. Under the GPA section and the appendix, when we talk about GPA, we're referring to a semester GPA, not a cumulative GPA?
That is correct. It is a semester, and thank you for that. Oh, yeah. I see where it says at the end of each semester, but I can understand how that might be interpreted as cumulative, but it is not meant to be. It is the GPA for that particular semester, that grading period.
Yeah, meaning that if an athlete, say, had a lower 1.9 GPA in early years of high school, but they were working to improve it, and they were subsequently exceeding the 2.0, they would be eligible to compete.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, or we can move on? Okay, Dr. Bergstrom, back to you.
Thank you. So then after the grading piece, I think the next most significant point that is not just about adding further clarity for parents is when you get to section 2.04.01.08 on cooperation and honesty. This is an addition to the policy that is based on feedback we have received, and that is, according to the proposal, a student who is completely honest, forthcoming, and cooperative upon being questioned by an administrator may reduce their suspension by 1 contest. The important thing to note in this is the WIAA policy, a suspension must be a minimum of 1 contest. So that may or may not help someone depending at what point they are in a particular season. And then you see after that there's information from the WIAA regarding maximums of games and suspensions, and there's also a flow chart that helps our families better understand consequences for any violation of the code. Next, I'll move on to a pretty significant piece, and that is section 2.05 entitled Other Conduct. So what we're really asking of our students is that they, by signing this, agree to follow municipal ordinances, the Wisconsin and federal law, student handbook, and school board policies. So that means that if there's a violation of the code of conduct or a violation of any of those pieces I just read, this would be something that could result in or will result in a consequence related to your participation in athletics or performance or contest-based clubs. So this could include potentially conduct that is on school property, at school-sponsored events, or on school-sponsored transportation. Also, it could include inappropriate conduct that's off campus, depending on what is permitted by law. So once again, it's ensuring that our students understand that we believe that there's an expectation related to their behavior when they are representing the Oregon School District. And whether they're at an FFA competition or they're at a baseball game, it's all about the fact that they're representing their friends and their teachers back in Oregon School District, the whole community really. And so we expect that they take that seriously.
All right, if there are any specific questions to that section, or I will entertain a motion. Oh, you have a question? Go ahead, Mary.
So under 2.05, other conduct, the second paragraph, first sentence, the student understands that it may be a code of conduct violation for failing to comply with the code of conduct. Seems like maybe we should consider rephrasing that. Seems a little redundant. So if that's a question I throw out, I'm not sure what it should be rephrased to, but.
I think what it's saying is you maybe can delete the first code of conduct, saying that it is a violation to fail to comply with this. That's a violation in itself to fail to comply with this. So striking the first code of conduct would probably do that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? And so I will turn it over to maybe Mary or Troy if you want to make a motion with both of those edits in there in terms of the semester GPA and that deletion of that, if we need to be that specific. Go ahead, Gina, if we do or do not.
Yes, I mean, I think you can do a motion. I think you do a motion with these two changes discussed. But I also found that I did, in line with the policy committee discussion, mean to strike another lookalike that I missed.
Okay.
So I'd also, if I would ask, that would be a recommendation that we talked about in policy. So I would ask if Troy would consider a friendly amendment that we could consider striking that lookalike in a different section, because I just missed it. So I apologize.
Okay, Troy.
Yeah, so I would move to approve the code of conduct as printed, with the exception of the 3 changes just discussed.
All right, is there a second to that motion? Second. All right, further discussion. Does anyone on the board have any further discussion or comments? Go ahead, Anna.
The only other one would be filling in that blank, right? Which
Yes.
is no big deal, but that could be part of the filling that in. That's all.
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
All right, I love you all. You're becoming copy editors. This is great. All right, any further discussion? All right, before we take a vote, I really would like to compliment Brittany as our athletic director. She has really raised the standard of our athletic department and the expectations that we have of our athletes, and Dr. Bergstrom and her leadership, that we really encourage our students to participate in co-curriculars, but there is a standard for representing this school district, and we are confident that our students can meet those standards, and their parents can help them do that, and their family members, and we are with them also as a school district to support in these somewhat elevated standards. Athletics and co-curriculars are very important, but they also teach really good life lessons, and a lot of those are discipline and raising your standard of behavior. So I'm really happy to see these changes personally. So thanks, Brittany, for all your work if you watch this at a later date. All right, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Thanks, everybody, and thanks to the policy committee for diving into those changes as well. Okay, moving on to D, discussion items, committee reports. First up is policy. Heather's not here, but I do believe our next policy meeting is July 31st, which is next Monday at 5:30. Is that correct? Okay, and then moving on to vision steering. Anna.
Okay. Oh, there. Great. Thanks. Visioning met last week. We had a great meeting. We were really kind of talking big picture about the role that our vision and steering committee will be taking throughout this upcoming school year, and actually projected out a couple of years based on some of the goals that are being set for our district. So it was a really productive meeting, and we're talking about maybe a book club and a couple of different fun things, or a book read. Our next meeting currently is, I think, on the calendar for August 9th, but to be determined on whether that meeting is going to work out for the timeline of working through some of our things. So for now, August 9th, and if that changes, I'll let everyone know.
Great, thank you, Anna. Okay, moving on to E, information items, and I will turn those items over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. Visioning and strategic planning is the first item up. and I'm sorry, the clicker won't work. Thank you. We'll be sharing some of our goal development work on August 14th. So I'm excited for that date, and I'll be referencing that again when we get to our information on, thank you, feedback insights, because that's where I want to go first. I have some information for you related to the school perception survey, and I'm excited to share it with you because it's all really good news. So when we look at our student surveys, and we had, let me think, I'm trying to remember how many student surveys they were. Oh, I don't think I even have it in my head because there were almost 1,600 families and 400 staff. And I think we only missed a handful of classrooms for our students. So the number of students grade 3 through 12 who responded to the survey was actually quite large when you think about it that way. And the news was really, really positive. All of the questions that were connected to students having positive relationships with the adults in their building, they were all in the upper quartile or better when compared, or you can't get much better, you can't get better than the upper quartile, but the upper quartile, we'll say that, related to comparison districts. And it's questions about whether or not students feel they have someone in their school to go to if they had a big problem. Do they have an adult to go to if they feel they were being bullied? Do they feel safe answering questions in class? These are all questions that get at to whether or not our students feel connected to the adults. And they absolutely do. As a matter of fact, the number of students saying yes to these questions was something I think we can all be really, really proud of. And we don't want to rest there. Even if there's 10% of our students who say they do not, those 10% matter. And that's why we will continue to target our efforts in this area, because a positive relationship between the students and the staff, that's one key piece in the foundation on which learning is built. People have to feel like teachers care about them and that their classroom is a safe place to be. And our data indicated that that's what our students are feeling. And they also had a really high response mark to strongly agree or agree to the idea of, do other students treat me with respect? So that was another high watermark. And the actual question, am I treated with, I think it's respect and dignity by staff. And that was actually our highest student response as far as the percentage answering in the positive to that question. And that really matters. So the fact that our students feel that means a lot. Now, how can we continue to grow? We can continue to grow to find ways to make content engaging, because our students will definitely tell us if they don't feel like what they're doing is interesting. And that's a good thing, right? We want them to be open about the engagement they have with their materials. And so that's something that we're continuously working on, and I think we'll be able to address that a little bit in our goal session on August 14th. 1,700, thank you. That's a pretty good number if you're only doing third through 12th. So if we go to our family surveys, once again, we saw really, really positive responses, upper quartile responses in everything. I think, as a matter of fact, when compared to comparison districts, our lowest question put us at 50%. So we know that even our very lowest response rate was average compared to other districts. So that feels good. We know that according to the survey, our families feel welcome at our schools. That matters. That they feel their students are treated with dignity and respect. That the family members also feel that there's at least one school staff member that they can go to with questions. Their students get help when they need it, and they're satisfied with their students' learning. Those were some of our very top percentages related to the number of people saying agree or strongly agree. And all of those things are really important to our students and to their learning, and to the fact that we are a connected community in service of our young people. Where we can grow and where we scored more at the average range was we want to help our families better understand how to support student learning, right? Our families want to know how can they better support their students. We want to give them a clear pathway to this, and you'll see once again on August 14th that is one of our goals in the area of communication, and we'll share that with you then. So both for the students and for the families, the responses were very positive. There were no statistically different answers from last year. So it was positive last year, it's positive this year, happy about that. And where we knew we could grow, that's where our families told us we could grow. And we have actually planned forward for that, and we're excited to share that with you soon. Now, when you get to staff, also, once again, really, really positive. And where actually our highest percentage of agree and strongly agree is that people in our district have a good understanding of the goals of the district. They had really positive scores related to communication from the district and from their school. Another piece that I think is really important to note is that we have an increase in the number of people who believe our pay practices are fair. And I think that's, a testament to the fact that our community supported the fact that we could potentially elevate, or we did elevate, our pay for our hardworking staff. And they really recognized that in this particular survey. And once again, they feel supported by the community. They feel supported by their administrators when making decisions. But the main area of growth, and this is significant because we knew this was an area of growth for last year, and it's even more so this year. And it's their answer to, or their response to the question, is your workload more manageable? More people this year than last year responded to the negative to that. So that is something that we're going to be talking about in just a moment too. Now, what I think is, before I turn to the next slide, I want to say one good thing. The only statistically significant increase in the entire set of surveys, which according to Bill Foster from School Perceptions is an increase of 0.2 or more, we increased by 0.36 the number of staff respondents who indicated they would recommend us as an employer. So that's an important increase, and I think it has so much to do with the amazing work of everybody within the district, but the community support when they passed the referendum. We were able to make some adjustments to our pay to make us more competitive, and I think people really, really appreciated that and appreciated the support of the community. Everybody's very, very grateful for that. Now, what makes the staff information really interesting is that we have data sets that allow us to triangulate what the staff told us through their surveys, but also what they told us through the stay interviews, which took place between January and March, with a few outliers in April. And there were close to 40 of those surveys. And then our year 3 interviews, normally we interview everybody who joined our district in year 2 of employment, and we just ask them about their experience onboarding into a district and what they saw as strengths and what they saw as challenges, and we make adjustments every year. So this year, because Mr. Tanner and I are just slightly behind in our year 2 interviews, we took everybody we missed and we made year 3. So we have a data set of year 3 interviews, that data set was examined by Mr. Tanner and myself for themes. We have the almost 40 stay interviews, which I think there was at least a page of notes with every one of those interviews, and they were examined by, of course, myself, because I lived through them, and Ms. Jonan and Ms. Mundinger, our communications director. And then we came together, because we did this independently, We came together with our themes, and then we also compared our themes to the themes generated by ChatGPT when Mr. Tanner uploaded all of the notes from the interview into that program. So we really had a computer examine the stay interview notes for themes and 3 individuals. And what came out of that was very aligned with what has come out of the staff survey and is very aligned with what's come out of year 3 interviews. Some of the things that we asked in the stay interviews are very specific, like why stay in education and in the OSD. Very clear to all of us reading the notes and ChatGPT that a passion for education was really high in their answer to that. They either had an educator in their life who inspired them. Many of them mentioned teachers that they had when they were kids. Or they had people in their family who inspired them. They wanted to be like someone who was an educator in their family. And sometimes it's just because they couldn't imagine ever doing anything else. This is what they know they were meant to do. So the passion for education was very evident, as was a love of working with students. That was a very common theme about why people stay. They stay first and foremost because of the kids and the fact that they really enjoy working with them. And also with their colleagues. Strong collegial relationships was another really important theme as to why people stay. Having a collaborative, supportive culture is imperative to people wanting to be here. And then the other piece that came up over and over again as a theme is they feel they have supportive leadership. When I interviewed people in the stay interviews, talking about the support from their principal was one of the most common answers when we asked them why they stay. They stay because the leader of their building, and they had all kinds of fun adjectives, related to the people who were leading the building for them. But it came down to the idea that they supported them, and they saw them, and they valued them, and they felt like they were on a team. There's even a question in the school perception survey: does your administrator support you when you're making decisions? And that was another really positive response, because that is what we try to foster in all of our school buildings, is that a collaborative team spirit where you know that people are there for the right reasons and they're making decisions collectively in order to do things better for our students. When we're doing that well, that's a hard thing to walk away from. Now, in all of these points of input, what were the clear challenges that cut across every one of these opportunities to get people's thinking? And the number one thing was work-life balance. The idea that there may be some real challenges with sustainability and what is needed in order for our teachers and all other educators to meet the needs of our students, because there are increasing demands and there are student behaviors that are challenging. Not all students all the time, but enough so that it came up in all of our points of feedback. So what are our next steps? Well, I've spoken about the fact that we already have some district level goals that are addressing some of the things that we've heard here tonight, such as the need for parents to better understand how they can help their children, or how to increase the amount of engagement that students feel with their content. We're going to be talking about all of that on August 14th. At that time, we'll also talk about the idea of creating a task force to explore sustainability in the profession. We understand that there are some things we'll never be able to change. It'll never be easy to be an educator. And honestly, good things are often hard, and that's okay. But what is within our realm of control to create more sustainability within our profession? What do we need to investigate more as district leadership in order to really be leaders in this area? Because I do want people to do what's really hard here because they know that they have the support they need. And that means being really honest about how to make it more sustainable. Also, related to some of the specific feedback we heard about our special educators having a particular high level of duties and even more trouble, I guess, in having the work-life balance because of the responsibilities that are such an important part about being an educator in the special education department. And we heard more about the need to support behaviors that are exhibited when students are dysregulated or they're really trying to communicate to us something that's going on in school or their life. In order to really be responsive to those things, Dr. Widensee and I have been speaking about adding an elementary program support coordinator who would assist in examining the IEPs for our students in elementary school, who would be a behavioral consultant for all of our special educators who are working on behavior plans for our students, who would also be in charge of paraprofessional professional development, because all of the adults in the building really have to be highly skilled in supporting students when they're having a hard time in school. And we already have one. We have one program support person who's wonderful. She works with Dr. Widensee, but she covers every single building in our district. And so if we really want to be able to have someone who can be a true consultant related to all of the things I mentioned, I think we're going to have to add an elementary program support coordinator to be responsive to all that we heard. So we'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks based purely on existing resource reallocation. Next spring, you will be seeing this as part of a staffing plan for a permanent position. But we don't want to wait until next spring. We want to be able to do some reallocation within our budget and do it now because our students and our staff need that extra support now. And as I mentioned previously, we are developing plans to help families better understand how to support learning, because we have families that really, really want to do that, and we want to give them the tools to be able to feel like they can be the support they want to be for their kids.
All right. Ready to take any questions board has?
I'm ready.
Okay. We'll go around the horn and see if anyone has any questions about the survey or some of the next steps. Mary, you want to start?
Sure. So I know you just mentioned the potential for reallocation of funds to support an elementary program support individual. What are you envisioning as where would that money come from?
Sorry. We'll be able to we have received a higher rate of reimbursement related to Medicaid, which is giving us a temporary pot of one-time funds that we could use for this particular year. So I think since that is connected to special education, I think it's a really appropriate reallocation of funds.
The only other question I have is really a request. So the school perception survey, will you be sharing the whole report with the board?
Sorry. Yes, we have charts that we can share with you.
All right. Troy, anything? All right. Anna.
Really nothing. I would agree. This is really great information to see. I mean, it's helpful to know that we have a lot of satisfied families and students and staff, and we know that we've got work to do, but this is a really great way for us to understand sort of what we're doing really well and what we can work on. And it's great to see that validated in kind of what we already sort of know or think. And so really, it's really great. Thank you.
Caleb.
So I think it was the staff slide said one of the challenges was that one. Increasing demands in education, professional challenges. Could you go into that a little bit? I'm curious specifically if that includes things that are coming down from like the state level and the climate at the state level in terms of if that's affecting staff, if you see something there or if there's been change there. I was just curious.
I think that the increasing demands really come from every part of society. And of course, some of it's coming from changes that happen at the state level that are then imposed upon school districts. But in this particular case, with Governor Evers signing the elementary literacy bill, that actually, those changes we've already begun to implement. So we're a little bit ahead on that. But that does lead to the fact that there is new science related to the importance of foundational literacy and what strategies are particularly effective. And so we are changing our curriculum. And that might seem like, to someone who isn't in education, that might seem like, well, of course you make adjustments, and of course we do. But when we do, because we must, because that's our moral imperative to do when we know more, when we know better, we must do better, right? But with consistent research into what works for education, which we're all grateful for, that does give us a new data set constantly in order to reflect, adjust, and implement. So that plan, act, study, do cycle for educators, it's constant. There's never an end to that because we're always trying to get better. I think honestly, people are so driven by their passion for doing what's right for students, that even if there weren't mandates from the state, they would constantly be pushing themselves to do something better for the students. I think that's part of who we are as people, and it shows up in the system in so many ways. And so when you have that internal drive to always do what's best, and then you have sort of external societal factors that are oftentimes telling you that what you're doing still isn't good enough, I think it can lead to a high level of stress in the profession. And that's, of course, me pontificating. I'm one person.
Caleb, anything else? Okay, Leslie.
Yes, so on the same slide, under professional challenges, it talks about student behaviors. And I want to tie this into the request to look at changing or adding additional elementary program support. I don't know if you have this, and I do look forward, by the way, to seeing the whole report, but wondering if the student behaviors, if you're able to break that down on a grade level kind of thing. Is that where you're seeing the biggest challenges on the student behaviors, or is that, or is it spread across?
It's definitely spread across. I mean, when students are struggling, oftentimes it's due to, things that are leading to dysregulation being exhibited in the school. But sometimes it's also students trying to communicate trauma and their experiences with trauma, and what that looks like when you're 6 years old and what it looks like when you're 17 years old might be a little bit different, but it's still pretty consistent throughout the school population. And I don't mean to imply that every student who has a behavioral problem has experienced trauma, but it is something that many of our students have experienced to varying degrees, and that does show up in how they regulate themselves emotionally, and it shows up in how a part of that emotional regulation is when students experience challenges within school, when they experience frustration, whether it's academic or it's social, and not always having the skills to deal with that frustration in a positive way. And it comes out in lots of ways, right? It can come out aggressively and verbally, or in other ways to other students. It can come out with hiding in the bathroom. It can come out by refusing to go to school overall. So all of the things that our students experience in their life, and as children, they don't often have the skills to work through it, and it comes out in ways that are really disruptive to their education.
So as a backup question for that, do we have the support that we need, that you feel is adequate support at our higher levels, at our middle school and our high school? Since we're looking at giving some more support to the elementary, do we have the more support that we need up above?
Thank you. The school board, since I think it's been about 2014, has added well over $1 million of support into student services, because this particular board was very proactive related to mental health and resource allocation. So I feel that right now, I don't think I could make a case for the fact that we need to hire more people in that realm. However, with Dr. Anderson leading that department, she's doing a really great job of infusing the importance of data into our culture of meeting the needs of our students in the social services or the student services realm, so that if we do believe that we need more, we would come to you with the data to show you that that was important.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? I just have a couple comments. I think it's really wonderful to see the data driving the decisions, and I know you do too. And it's as Anna mentioned, it's things that maybe we were thinking, but now we have the data to tell us that that's really what we should be doing, and the goals are driving the data's driving the goals, which is driving the work, and we do the right things, then the right things happen. I think the other piece about bringing parents along, I applaud our district, and I'm meaning a lowercase d, meaning this community, that they are very engaged in their kids' education, and one of the worst things we could have is indifference. And people are very invested in education as a concept and the education of their kids in the Oregon School District, and that's what makes us better too. And so I think those are things that are very exciting for the future of this district and your leadership and our team. It really feels like we know what we need to do, right? And now we need people to come along with us, and a little help from the state would be great. But, you know, we'll do what we can do, right? So, but we know the things that we do need to do that we can control. So thank you for that report. It's really going to be an exciting year. So back to you for superintendent's report.
Well, it's a brief one. It's a brief one, but a fun one. So look at this. I just have to get to the right page in this one, because this is another fun one from the fair. If you haven't listened to our fair podcast, you should, because boy, are the kids there impressive. And this is another impressive young person, Gabe Klon, for exhibiting the champion market gilt and supreme champion hog of the Greene County Fair. Additionally, he was named top showman in grades 8 through 9. Remember, we had a top showman at the Stoughton Fair the last time we spoke. Gabe's hard work and dedicated attention to his supervised agricultural experience program paid dividends. We're very proud of you, Gabe. And then summer semester. This is the last week of our summer program, and it's been a lot of fun. From reading to cooking to writing with a quill to basketball, our students continue to enjoy summer semester. One thing you'll notice is the green shirts present throughout all of it. Those are our student interns. As you can see, students in our classes love engaging with them, and the feeling is really mutual. They are great learning opportunities for both. But when I am there and I am able to watch our student interns interacting with our students who are trying to find their way around a high school or trying to do other things, we absolutely have some future educators in the bunch. Or if not educators in the way that we see it here in the district, people who will be educators in other manners, because boy, are they good. And then just remember to tune into the podcast, because just last Thursday, you'll recognize a few students here. But not last Thursday, we heard from our alumni who've come back to work at the OSD in the summer. And they're talking about what it's like to come back and work within the district, and what the district was able to do to provide them the foundation for all the really cool things they're doing now. And that's it for our superintendent's report.
Okay, moving on to F closing. Our next meeting is August 14th. And as Dr. Bergstrom mentioned, we'll be diving into some of the goals and objectives conversations in that meeting. Other than that, we can do checkout. So does anybody have anything for checkout? I'll start over here this time. Leslie, Caleb, Anna, Troy, Mary. All right, we will adjourn we will take a pause here for about 5 minutes, and we'll meet in closed session at 7:30. Thank you, everybody.